Simply put, MOZA have really pulled out of the bag with the FSR wheel. This is possibly one of the most impressive sim racing steering wheels I've seen in a very long time. The MOZA Racing FSR wheel is a formula style wheel that features a large 4.3 inch HD display. Yeah, brands such as Cube Controls and Rexing have released sim racing wheels with large display screens before, but they often cost over 4 figures, putting them well out of reach of many sim racers. This wheel doesn't even come close to that price, and before I go any further, I know Thrustmaster also have the SF1000 wheel with a screen, which is actually cheaper than this FSR wheel. However, that wheel doesn't quite stack up in terms of build quality or performance when compared to the FSR, but I'll touch on that more later. And before going too far into this review, I do want to talk about price, as that is often one of the most important factors when shopping for sim racing products. This MOZA FSR wheel costs $649, which puts it comfortably at the top of MOZA's product lineup, ahead of the GS and Premium RS wheel. I've dropped a link in the description below for this steering wheel if you do fancy checking it out. And I do want to say that MOZA have supplied this wheel for review purposes, but as always, this certainly won't affect anything I say in this review. So we now know the price point, but what actually is the FSR wheel and who is it targeted towards? Well, you can essentially look at the FSR wheel as a MOZA GS wheel with a screen plonked on. If you haven't checked out the GS wheel yet, head over and view my in-depth review of that and find out just why I think it's one of the best formula style wheel rims in 2022. But back to the FSR, and the design of this wheel borrows a lot from that GS wheel, with a little bit of reconfiguration to fit in the large new screen. The number of buttons, encoders and inputs remains exactly the same as the GS wheel, and so does the fantastic build quality. There has been a heavy use of carbon fibre throughout, from the thick faceplate to the shifters, and while the GS wheel that came before used forged carbon fibre, this FSR wheel opts for a more conventional carbon fibre weave. The hand grip material has also changed, opting for a more versatile perforated leather rather than the more delicate Alcantara, and this for me is a good move, as it essentially makes the wheel much more hard wearing. And for me, the wheel size is just about right here. Interestingly, it does come in slightly slimmer than the GS wheel at 280mm, with the GS wheel sitting around 300mm across, making it slightly on the large side for a sim racing wheel. Really, 280 is the sweet spot when it comes to formula style wheels. As you can see, the FSR wheel does borrow a lot from the GS wheel, including the inputs, rev bar, and magnetic shifters. And that isn't a bad thing, as the GS wheel has just about everything you need in a sim wheel. But before I talk about the inputs, I first want to touch on the FS wheel's party piece, the screen. This is the biggest draw for choosing this wheel over other offerings, such as the GS wheel or the Fanatec Formula V 2.5. This HD screen measures 4.3 inches from corner to corner and includes a variety of different displays and designs. Some are more orientated towards GT racing with readouts including traction control level, brake bias, predicted lap times, etc. And others are designed to look more like a real-world car's dashboard and feature a circular speedo. And there are also a couple of screens that are obviously targeted at those racing F122. This screen in particular, which I love racing with, emulates a similar design found in F122, with the ERS overtake bar, your deployment and harvesting levels front and centre. You can switch between each different screen while racing by using a combination of the right dual clutch paddle and the right joystick. This allows you to quickly check your tyre temperatures before switching back to see your ERS deployment or your predicted lap time. I didn't realise how much of a game changer having a screen on your wheel really was until I raced with this wheel. When racing F122, ACC or any other game, I often find myself relying heavily on some small HUD elements or on the in-game wheel's screen. This can be hard to read if the display is too small or requires button presses to bring up the correct bit of telemetry I'm after. With the information right in front of you on your wheel, I find myself spending much less time looking around my monitor searching for the information I'm after. It also adds a layer of immersion to my sim racing experience, which I loved. When using the wheel and looking down to check my tyre temperatures or my ERS deployment level, it made me feel much more involved in the race compared to checking an on-screen HUD. And moving away from the screen for a second, there are a plethora of different inputs on the FSR wheel. probably enough to start the engine on an Airbus A380. Okay, maybe not quite enough to start an A380, but there's still a lot of inputs on show here. You'll find a set of 10 individual push buttons, which can each be assigned to a different input in game. These are perfect for activating the pit speed limiter, ERS overtake mode, DRS, or simply pausing the game or changing your camera angle. Each button is LED backlit with a range of different colours for you to choose from. This is a really nice touch and adds to that premium feel of this wheel. It's also helpful for those who like to race in darker rooms, as you can easily see the buttons with the lights out. Each button features a nice throw distance with a very positive click. Towards the top of the wheel is an RGB rev bar. This is the classic MOZA rev bar, which features individual customizable LED lights behind a diffused plastic strip. If you have seen any of my other MOZA steering wheel reviews, you'll know that I'm not a fan of this rev bar. I would much prefer individually lit LED lights like those found on the real race cars or Fanatec wheels. You can adjust the colour of each individual light, allowing for a truly personalised experience when accelerating through gears, and you can also adjust the timing of the lights as well in the pit house software. This works well in practice, allowing you to be able to make the rev lights illuminate early or late, or in groups like some Formula 1 wheels do. Moving on to the rotary encoders, the FSR features the same 5 front-facing rotary encoders as the GS wheel, albeit in a different layout due to the screen, but essentially they're exactly the same. Then there are an additional 2 thumb encoders, one on each side of the wheel. All of these encoders can be configured to affect different in-game car settings. These inputs allow you to quickly adjust settings such as brake bias, engine modes, differential setups, etc., all on the fly. Each encoder at the front sits in front of a pre-installed sticker with numbers on, and it's good to see that MOZA has fixed the quality control issue that plagued the GS wheel. With the older GS wheel, almost none of the encoders lined up with the stickers, but as you can see now they do. It's a small issue and one that is easy to fix, and it's good to see that they've addressed it. There are also a couple of smaller knobs or joysticks. These give you 4 direction inputs as well as a click input. I almost always use these for scrolling through menus in game, allowing me to do away with my keyboard and mouse in some games. They're also useful for quickly glancing left and right to see what is around you on track. But strangely, despite being able to rotate the knobs a full 360 degrees, they only register 4 directional inputs like a D-pad would. It would have been nice to see them act as 2 full 360 degree analog sticks. Flipping the wheel over, we have a range of paddle shifters. There are 2 carbon fibre magnetic paddle shifters, along with 2 carbon fibre analog shifters directly below. The shifters feel amazing to the touch. They're constructed completely from carbon fibre with really nice smooth edges that just feel nice to touch. They feel equally as good to use as well, with a really positive click. The magnets that are used are pretty strong, requiring you to really have to want to shift. You certainly won't accidentally knock the shifter or miss a shift. The strong magnets and the metal and carbon fibre construction do have their drawbacks though. Because you have to pull each shifter relatively hard, they do make a rather large click sound when you activate them. While not really affecting me in my studio, they can be heard in adjoining rooms, which can be annoying if racing later at night. If you wake your sleeping child or partner when sim racing late at night, don't blame me, you've been warned. Finally, there is the familiar MOZA quick release. This appears to be unchanged from the quick releases found on the other MOZA products, and that is definitely a good thing. This quick release is without a doubt one of the best on the market. You simply pull the quick release and then pull the wheel away from your wheelbase to release it, and then simply push it back on to reattach it. It's as simple and intuitive as a quick release can be. And if you have other MOZA steering wheels such as the CS, RS or GS wheel, you can interchange them in seconds. But just below the quick release is something that we've not seen on a MOZA wheel up until this one. There is a port for a data cable. Every MOZA wheel until now has utilised Bluetooth to communicate with the wheelbase. However, the FSR features this port, allowing for it to be hardwired to a wheelbase. Now I've spoken to MOZA, and they've indicated that this will allow the MOZA FSR wheel to be used with other brands' wheelbases for the first time ever. This is fantastic news and really opens up this wheel to a much wider range of sim racer. But when you get the MOZA FSR out on track, this wheel really comes into its own. The tried and tested design of the buttons, encoders and shifters all work seamlessly and deliver a high quality experience every time you activate an input. The screen takes the immersion and gameplay up another level. You truly feel like you're behind the wheel of a race car. And if you have an ultra-wide monitor or a triple screen setup, you could be forgiven for forgetting you're sitting in your living room or office. Of course, if you only race in VR, then you may want to steer away from this wheel and look at the cheaper GS steering wheel. That delivers the same level of control without the screen, which quite frankly isn't required in VR. The compatibility for the FSR wheel is rather unique for a MOZA product. Normally, I'll tell you this MOZA steering wheel is PC compatible only, and only works with MOZA branded wheelbases. However, this isn't quite true this time around. Yes, the FSR wheel is still only compatible with PC, with no confirmed console compatibility baked in at all. However, the addition of a data port like I just mentioned on the rear of this wheel does open up compatibility with other branded wheelbases. I haven't had full confirmation of how this works just yet, and we'll know more after the official launch. So, okay, before I bring you my final verdict on this wheel, I'm going to have to mention a couple of things that I didn't like about it. I thought it was only fair to mention these, despite my overall experience being very positive. The first thing I picked up on, which is a very minor build quality issue, is that the rubber moulding on the front of the wheel, just above the rev lights, sticks away from the faceplate. It looks like the rubber is slightly too large and is bulging out ever so slightly. Hopefully this is a very small issue with just the first run of production models such as this one. Secondly, the shifters are still very loud to use. This is something I mentioned in my GS steering wheel and it appears to not have been fixed with this wheel. The magnets that are part of the shifters are very strong, giving you a fantastically positive feeling when pulling a shift, but the force it takes to do so makes a relatively loud sound as the metal of the magnet makes contact with the metal shifter housing. Yes, there are some silencing pads included, but trust me, they don't really remove enough noise for my liking. Next up, I did mention you can change the screen's display while driving, allowing you to flick between different screen layouts, which is a great function. This is really neat and something I did use a lot. However, this requires two inputs to be pressed on your controller. If, like me, you have either of these inputs mapped in-game, every time you try to change screen, these two inputs will activate. The easy solution to this is for us to not map those buttons in-game. However, I'm very used to using the right joystick to look around the car, meaning that every time I change the screen on my steering wheel, my camera quickly flicked to the right. Yeah, it's a very small issue, but it would be nice to see this addressed with maybe the inclusion of a dedicated button to change the screen. But quite frankly, this wheel has had me excited from the second I opened the box. It delivers pretty much everything I would want from a sim racing wheel. Me being primarily a racer of Formula 1 and GT games, this wheel design is absolutely spot on for what I'd be looking for. The screen is an addition that I didn't realise that would have such a big impact on overall gameplay. The immersion it brings and the functionality it adds is incredible. And it's almost hard to go back to wheels without an inbuilt screen now. Wheels such as the MOZA GS wheel and the Fanatec Formula wheels, and even the Cube Controls Formula wheels. They all seem so rudimentary all of a sudden. This wheel has broken other wheels for me. There's no getting past the fact that this is a rather expensive steering wheel, although it does keep away from the lofty price tags of some uber premium offerings. But it certainly should be a carefully considered purchase. But if it's within your price range, I would recommend it in a flash. It offers great design and build quality, fantastic immersion and in-game control. This is quite frankly the best MOZA Racing wheel yet, and it's a great sign of new things to come.